Security. Good morning. Good morning.
See how he did it.
You dance, love, joy, and dreams.
American Masters gives you a tap-happy look at Gene Kelly, Anatomy of a Dancer.
That's Saturday at 9:30 here on OPB.
Good evening, I'm Jim Lehrer. On the NewsHour tonight, a summary of today's news, including excerpts from President Bush's news conference, an extended report on the spreading sex and cover-up scandal within the Catholic Church in America, some perspective on the troubled, challenged elections in Zimbabwe, and a conversation about President Bush.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by...
Imagine a world where no child begs for food. While some will look on that as a dream, others will look long and hard and get to work. ADM, the nature of what's to come.
And by SBC Communications. In the last year alone, SBC employees volunteered more than 6 million hours, which means even when we're not working to improve communications, we're doing something to help improve communities. SBC Communications.
and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This program was also made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
President Bush today criticized recent military actions by Israel as not being helpful to stopping the violence in the Middle East. He did so at an afternoon news conference at the White House that covered a variety of subjects and lasted more than 45 minutes. On the Middle East, the president said he hoped a U.S. peace envoy, General Anthony Zinni, will improve the situation. He's due to arrive tomorrow.
Frankly, it's not helpful what the Israelis have recently done in order to create conditions for peace. I understand someone trying to defend themselves and to fight terror, but the recent actions aren't helpful. And so Zinni's job is to go over there and work to get conditions such that we can get into Tenet. And he's got a lot of work to do, but if I didn't think he could make progress, I wouldn't have asked him to go.
In the Middle East today, Israeli forces tightened their control on the West Bank town of Ramallah. They seized it yesterday in a campaign to capture suspected militants. We have a report from John Irvine of Independent Television News.
The Israeli army says its operation in Ramallah has been a psychological victory. People have been forced to abandon the streets, leaving them to the tanks and foot soldiers of the Israeli army. Their bulldozers and tanks have cleared the way, and the Israelis have advanced into the commercial heart of the town, where occasionally they engage with Palestinian snipers. The only others who ventured out were the ambulance crews, and there were plenty of injured for them to recover. These medics were working in difficult circumstances. Among those injured today was a French photographer, another journalist, an Italian was shot dead. There have been more fatalities on both the Israeli and Palestinian sides. Tonight, sporadic gun battles continue, but only a small part of Ramallah is not under Israeli control. They have extended the occupation.
Also at his news conference this afternoon, President Bush reacted angrily to reports two September 11 hijackers had their U.S. student visas renewed 6 months after the attacks. The visas remained in the pipeline even though the hijackers' names were widely known. Here's what the president said about it.
I was stunned and not happy. Let me put it another way. I was plenty hot. And I made that clear to people in my administration. Look, the INS needs to be reformed. And it's one of the reasons why I called for the separation of the paperwork side of the INS from the enforcement side. And obviously the paperwork side needs a lot of work. It's inexcusable.
Attorney General Ashcroft ordered an immediate and quick investigation into the matter. The president also said he'd signed an agreement with Russian President Putin to cut their nuclear arsenals by 2/3, but he also said all options, including nuclear weapons, remained on the table if needed to defend the United States. Of Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein, Mr. Bush said, "We're going to deal with him." The president also said he did not recognize the election result in Zimbabwe. The government there today declared President Mugabe the winner of the presidential election. His opponent called the process a fraud. He said the government closed polls and intimidated thousands of people from voting. In Washington, Secretary of State Powell agreed the election was fundamentally flawed, and he said new sanctions were being considered. We'll have more on the story later in the program tonight. The major assault in eastern Afghanistan appeared at an end today. U.S. and Afghan forces captured an important valley in the mountains near Gardez, and they took up positions on a strategic ridge known as the Whaleback. Most American troops returned to their base outside Kabul. Others stayed on to hunt down enemy fighters who fled. U.S. officials said about 20 prisoners were being held and interrogated. The Senate today voted down tough new fuel efficiency standards. They would have required automobiles to get 36 miles to the gallon by the year 2015. That's an increase of about 50% over the current levels. The auto industry and labor unions opposed the measure. It would have been part of a larger energy bill. Americans spent more in February. The Commerce Department said today retail sales were up 0.3%. It was the largest increase in 4 months. Consumer spending accounts for 2/3 of all U.S. economic activity. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now it's on to the sex scandal in the Catholic Church, the troubled elections in Zimbabwe, and a new book about President Bush. We begin tonight with a report on the sex and cover-up scandal that has engulfed the Catholic Church in recent months. Seldom a day goes by without a revelation, a development concerning improper conduct by one or more priests. Spencer Michaels has been looking into the many issues raised. Here's his report.
In the wine country north of San Francisco, the national scandals over Catholic priests abusing children have an all-too-familiar ring. At least 6 priests, including a bishop, have been accused of sexual abuse in the Diocese of Santa Rosa. 140,000 Catholics and more than 100 clergy live in this diocese, most of them in Sonoma County. Sister Jane Kelly says that for 27 years, she has watched the cases pile up and the local diocese circle the wagons. She has been speaking out for years, mostly ignored, and now at 71, she is so outraged that she is writing a book detailing the sins of the clergy.
We've taken Peter's rock and turned it over, and oh my God, what do we find? People are rising up and not saying the yeses any longer. And they are demanding answers, and they are demanding accountability and responsibility. And the church will never be the same.
The specter of priests abusing children is hardly new, but the recent case of Father John Gagan of Boston, accused of molesting 130 children over 30 years, has refocused national attention on the problem. Gagan was recently convicted in one case and sentenced to prison.
Punished by confinement to Massachusetts State's prison for a term of not more than 10 years, nor less than 9 years.
Angry parishioners have called for the resignation of the Boston Archbishop, Cardinal Bernard Law, for not removing the offending priests, but instead transferring them to other parishes. The Archbishop has apologized and remains in power.
Reiterated again my profound apology to victims and the families of victims of sexual abuse as minors by clergy.
He recently turned over the names of 80 Boston area clerics accused of molesting children over the last 50 years. The Boston Archdiocese yesterday announced it would pay 50 victims of abuse by Father Gagan $500,000 each, and 36 other victims lesser amounts. for a total of $15 to $30 million. Insurance will pay only part of this and other settlements. The Catholic Church in America has paid out at least $300 million, perhaps triple that amount, to victims of abuse across the country. In this Sonoma County courthouse, a 58-year-old Catholic priest, Father Donald Kimball, is facing criminal charges of rape and child molestation. The alleged incidents took place 2 decades ago. The Catholic Church has already settled a civil lawsuit naming the priest for $1.6 million. Father Kimball, who worked with youth groups in Santa Rosa but has now been made an inactive priest, has decided to fight the charges against him, which he considers part of a national witch hunt.
You have to understand, I'm innocent. I'm still officially innocent. I'm getting harassed in stores now because people are putting my picture up. They think, you know, the worst thing you can accuse anybody is a child molester. This isn't going to end like Boston, okay?
A former bishop has acknowledged in court testimony that Kimball had apologized to him for a long history of molestation. This Santa Rosa family, the Hordes, is partially responsible for priests like Kimball going to trial. Because one family member was molested by a priest, other family members lobbied successfully for a state law that extends the statute of limitations for sexual and physical abuse crimes against children. 39-year-old Donald Horde, today a successful accountant and a father, was molested at a church summer camp when he was 11 by the priest in charge.
Father Timmons made our counselors go away. They had student counselors that ran each of the groups of about 8 kids. And then he was in a sleeping bag with me. And, you know, he molested me at that time. And then the following summers, he did the same thing. He had, it rained, and he moved my sleeping bag into a shed. And stayed in there with me all night, you know, forcing me to do stuff with him and doing stuff to me. And then you go to church the following Sunday after this happens to you, and you're listening to them, you know, say you're going to go to hell for doing these kinds of things, and then it's a priest that's doing it to you. You can't even... There's no way to tell anyone, and you don't want anyone to know. You know that it's wrong, but you don't want anyone to know. You think you're the only one. That's the other thing.
Horde didn't tell anyone for 20 years, until others who had been molested came forward.
When you're 11, I mean, you almost think of priests as God, and you almost feel like he's chosen you for something that you've done. And that's, I think, the critical thing for people why they don't talk.
Years later, the priest was convicted and sentenced to 8 years in prison. He served 4. Horde and his father have publicly criticized the church for encouraging silence and for resisting efforts to discipline and remove offending priests. Here, as in Boston, critics allege that priests who were accused of molesting children were often simply transferred to another parish to keep the allegations from becoming public and embarrassing the church.
We see that they, in fact, were covering up for these people, and they were moving them around. Boston is just a glaring exposure of it.
But it's the same.
It's the same.
No different.
Why do you say it's the same? What is the same?
Every diocese that we've encountered has the exact same fact pattern. They all have multiple transfers.
That no longer is the case in Santa Rosa, according to Bishop Daniel Walsh, who was brought here 2 years ago to replace a bishop who was removed for having an affair with a parish priest. Walsh said that if misbehaving priests were transferred in the past, it was because the bishop didn't know they were molesting.
In this diocese, people were not moved around who were child molesters. They did not know they were child molesters. When it came out, then we realized they had been moved around, but there was no knowledge in this office, at least from the records, that anybody knew that these people were misbehaving. I'm sure it might seem like, quote, an old boys network. It is not. The priests, religious, and lay employees of the church and the volunteers are good people. It's preposterous to think that I would allow someone who has a potential of harming a child and give him an assignment. That doesn't make sense.
Walsh, concerned that the good name of falsely accused people could be at stake, has created a sensitive issues committee of clergy and lay Catholics to look at allegations against priests.
They investigate that accusation to see if it's credible. And if it's credible, then they do further investigation and make a recommendation to me. Once the accusation is believed to be credible, the one who is accused is put on administrative leave.
When in that process, if ever, are the police or Child Protective Services called in?
As soon as it's made as soon as we believe it's a credible accusation.
That's by you?
It would be by myself or the chairman of the sensitive issues, yes.
The law does not allow the bishop to investigate crimes.
Donald Hord Sr. helped write that law, which requires clergy to report sexual crimes directly to the police.
The bishop is absolutely, totally incorrect, and he is suborning the way we got the law passed. It was done to prevent people like him and his committee from reviewing these claims and deciding what is abuse and what isn't. That is the police and the DA's job, not the bishop.
No one in the Hord family has remained Catholic, but family members continue to push for changes in the church, including reforms at the places where priests are trained. This is St. Patrick's Seminary near San Francisco, where the Santa Rosa Diocese sends its aspiring priests. According to Father Gerald Coleman, the rector in charge, St. Patrick's has changed since the days he was a seminarian.
We didn't have any training in sexuality or celibacy. There was just an assumption that if you went through the seminary and you passed all your courses, as a matter of fact, all of this was just going to take care of itself.
Just 2 years ago, the academic dean at St. Patrick's was removed after he was arrested for soliciting sex with minors on the internet. That came as a huge shock to Father Coleman, who teaches this course on human sexuality to seminarians.
Let me say something about impotency and sterility that we looked at.
He also presides over a screening process, including psychological tests designed to weed out prospective priests who might be pedophiles. The approach to sex and celibacy is much more open than before.
We ask students about their own assessment of their own sexuality, their own orientation, their own ability to live celibately, and we kind of get a sense of them, how they articulate that and what they mean and don't mean by it. There are various components in place that address questions of sexuality in their own life. So what we're hoping for and have geared carefully is that by the time we recommend to the bishop a guy gets ordained, that he is a holistic fellow sexually, spiritually, and so on, so that he wouldn't demonstrate any dysfunctional problems in terms of sexuality, pedophilia being one of them.
4 seminarians we spoke with said the new openness about sex has been healthy.
I think that a climate and a community that fosters dialogue on these issues will allow people to deal with and to talk about some of these things, as well as some of the behavior that you would see in the past. We certainly talked about in our human sexuality class the profile of a pedophile, and somebody who isolates and doesn't make friends. Somebody like that wouldn't last in the seminary community now.
I think it's fortunate now in today's seminaries that we are dealing with sexuality and we are open about it. It really behooves the individual to know what preference he has and to deal with that and to be comfortable with that, because you cannot embrace celibacy without embracing your sexuality.
The church is talking about things that perhaps were not talked about at all. I mean, as recent as 10 or 20 years ago. So I hope that openness is growing not only for younger priests, but also for older priests as well.
Thomas Plant counsels Catholic priests who commit sexual abuse. His studies show that 60% of all sex-offending clergy were abused themselves. And he says that while some people blame the demands of celibacy for abuse, studies show Catholic priests don't offend more than other clergy.
The percentage of clergy, regardless of religious tradition, who have a sexual predilection for minors is the same, whether they're a priest, a rabbi, Protestant minister. So the percentage of clergy involved with minors seems to be similar among the different religious traditions.
That figure says Plant is about 5% of priests. But he says Catholic offenders tend to have more victims because of the hierarchical nature of the church.
You have one pair of eyes, the local bishop or religious superior. And because of that, if that particular bishop or religious superior doesn't deal with the situation, then it's like a virus that spreads. And when they move them from parish to parish, again, it's like a virus that spreads.
Plant believes abusive behavior can be treated and controlled, though not cured. Treatment centers for abusive priests were set up in the 70s and still exist. Bishop Walsh says the church operated for years on the principle that pedophilic priests could be rehabilitated.
We were being more and more made aware that this was a sickness, but we were told at that time by the psychiatrists that it could be cured. And so we would send priests to these various centers of learning or institutes, and they would be, quote, straightened out. Well, now we are told it's not curable. So we have learned, along with the rest of society, that certain areas of human behavior are permanent, and therefore we act upon it in that way.
Past victims of abuse, like Donald Hord, say the Catholic Church has been overly concerned with the welfare of the perpetrators rather than the victims, who carry the scars of abuse for a lifetime.
I was confused for a long time about, why did God do this to me? And it's very hard to explain to someone that, people look at me and they say you're successful and you have a beautiful wife and kids and a great job and you went to Berkeley, and you still feel like that 11-year-old that's tainted. And it doesn't go away.
Still, aspiring priests, like their elders, worry that today's sexual scandals are tainting the church in the eyes of many Americans.
What troubles a lot of us, I think, is that people will have the impression that the whole church is like this, and that, it ignores the vast majority of priests that are good priests and really there to serve the church and the people.
At the same time, many reformers believe there is a positive side to this tragic story. They say the publicity and harsh criticism surrounding the sex scandals have forced the church for the first time to deal publicly with a problem kept hidden for many years.
Still to come on the NewsHour tonight, the challenged elections in Zimbabwe and a new book conversation. But first, this is Pledge Week on public television. We're taking a short break now so your public television station can ask for your support. That support helps keep programs like ours on the air.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of the NewsHour. I'm Deirdre Gabriel, and we're taking just a few moments of your time to ask for you to do a very simple thing. Become a supporting member of this public television station. It's very easy to do. You see that number right on the screen there. Go on and pick up the phone and make your pledge right now. The NewsHour has been on for almost 30 years, if you can believe it. But in that 30 years, it's proven to be a reliable and trusted source for news and information, the kind of information you really can't find anywhere else. If you value the NewsHour and all of our public affairs programming, now is the chance for you to show your support by making a pledge, becoming a member of this station. The number's on the screen. Go to the phone. Don't wait any longer. Now is the perfect time to do so. You may have never been a member before, so go on and take that step, or you might already be a member, in which case we do thank you. But maybe it's the time of year when you renew your membership, or maybe you'd like to just send a little extra something. Whatever the situation, call right now. Talk to one of our operators. They will help you pick a membership level that's comfortable for you, and you can sit back and enjoy the rest of the NewsHour knowing that you've done your part to support quality programming like this on your public television station. Remember, you can make your pledge using a credit card. That's a fast and easy way to take care of your membership, and we'll make you an instant member. Or if you prefer to send a check, we can do that for you as well. Go on and make that call. I'm joined in the studio here with Tom Hurley, and we are just thrilled to be able to take this few moments and ask for your support.
Yes, and if you have called in the last moment or two, thank you very much. We really appreciate your support. But if you've yet to call, here's another great reason to do so, and that's the NewsHour coffee mug with Jim Lehrer's name on it. We'd be happy to send one to you as our way of saying thank you for supporting the NewsHour here on public television. All you need to do is go to your telephone, pick it up, and make a pledge of whatever amount you would like. But if you pledge $60 or more and you ask for it, we'd be happy to send you this mug. And that way, every time you have your coffee or even keep pencils in it on your desk, you'll be reminded that this television program is unique. Jim Lehrer and his crew has an even-handed approach towards the news that I think you'll discover is unique in television. And we'd like to be able to keep this program on the air for a very long time. Now, besides all the great correspondents and writers and technicians, one of the most important members of our team is you, the member of public television who once a year goes to the telephone and makes a financial pledge of support, because the dollars you give will go right back to bringing you more episodes of the NewsHour every weekday right here on this station. Go to your telephone right now. Don't miss a single minute. Support the NewsHour and ask for the coffee mug. We'd be happy to send one to you. The important thing is to call right now.
PBS takes you back in time to remember your heroes from the past and the sounds that shaped rock and roll. Become a member now and support the programs you love. It's simple. Just pick up the phone. The number's on your screen. Tell the operator that you'd like to use your Visa or MasterCard to make your pledge. Or ask for an invoice, then mail in your check. Please make that call now and become a member of public television.
It really is easy to become a member, so don't wait any longer. Go to the phone right now and call the number on your screen to become a member of this public television station. I know I tend to be a little bit of a procrastinator when it comes to things. I always pay my bills on time, but, you know, right at the last minute. And maybe you fall into that category as well. Well, don't procrastinate any longer. Do it right now. We're going to be rejoining the NewsHour in just a few moments. So now's the time to do it so that you don't miss anything when the program comes back. Make your call right now. Become a financial supporter of this public television station for all the programming you enjoy, including the NewsHour.
And don't forget, we'd be happy to send you the NewsHour coffee mug with your pledge of support of $60 or more. Just ask for it when you talk to one of our operators on the telephone. And remember, too, that if you haven't supported the station recently, maybe it's been more than a year or more, now is a great time to renew your support. Just call the telephone number on your screen. Say that, yes, I'm still watching the NewsHour. I appreciate the work that Jim Lehrer and his entire crew does, and I'm willing to stick with you for another year. And your dollars will go directly to bringing you the kinds of programs you expect and deserve. But it all takes a telephone call from you right now. Please don't wait another second. Everybody on the team is depending on you right now. Go to your telephone, look at the number, and then dial it, and welcome back. Call now.
Now an update on the contested and potentially explosive presidential election outcome in the African nation of Zimbabwe. Gwen Eiffel has the story.
At least some Zimbabweans took to the streets today to celebrate President Robert Mugabe's election to a third term in office. This after Zimbabwe's government officially declared the 78-year-old Mugabe the winner of an election fiercely condemned by election observers. Mugabe won another 6-year term with 56% of the vote, easily defeating his chief rival, 49-year-old Morgan Tsvangirai, by more than 400,000 votes. Tsvangirai's party, the Movement for Democratic Change, mounted the toughest challenge Mugabe has faced in his 22-year rule. Election observers said violence and intimidation marked the election, which continued for an unprecedented 3 days, amid reports that hundreds of thousands of voters were kept from casting ballots. Zimbabwe's government officials have repeatedly denied any wrongdoing.
I think that any objective-minded person will agree that these elections were conducted freely and fairly and in an atmosphere of peace.
But Tsvangirai said his party wouldn't accept the outcome.
This election, as announced by the Registrar General's office, does not reflect the true will of the people of Zimbabwe and are consequently illegitimate in the eyes of the people. As we are talking here, the people of Zimbabwe are seething with anger. But how that anger is going to be directed in a constructive way, in a strategic way. That's for the matter of various structures of our party to discuss.
Some election observers from Nigeria and South Africa said the vote should stand.
We are hopeful that now that the people of Zimbabwe have spoken, the world will respect their verdict.
But most foreign observers have questioned the election's validity.
The basic conclusion is that the elections here in Zimbabwe did not meet international standards when it comes to some key points. And one of the points is the pre-election phase, where the campaign was marred by political violence. And even though incidents were to attribute to both parties, in some cases there is a clear pattern of violence against the opposition by the ruling party and by the police.
And in Washington, President Bush said the U.S. government would not accept the result.
We do not recognize the outcome of the election because we think it's flawed. And we are dealing with our friends to figure out how to deal with this flawed election.
The State Department said the U.S. may respond by freezing individual assets and banning commercial export licenses. UN Secretary General Kofi Annan warned against the prospect of violence in Zimbabwe.
Let me appeal once again to all Zimbabweans to remain calm, to show respect for each other's rights and the democratic process, and to disavow all acts of violence and retribution.
The U.S. and the European Union had already imposed a travel ban on Mugabe and his ruling elite after Mugabe's government expelled the EU's chief election observer last month. For more on Zimbabwe's election, we turn to Jeffrey Herbst, professor of international affairs at Princeton University and author of State and Politics in Zimbabwe, and Ray Choto, a writer for the Standard newspaper in Zimbabwe. 3 years ago, Mr. Choto was arrested and tortured by the Zimbabwean military for refusing to disclose a source. Ray Choto is now a Knight Foundation Senior Research Fellow at Stanford University. Gentlemen, welcome. Mr. Herbst, Professor Herbst, was this a democratic election?
No, it was not a free and fair election. There were significant irregularities during the election itself, and just as important, there were significant instances of intimidation and violence against the opposition in the 3 to 6 month run-up to the election, making it impossible for the Zimbabwean people to express their views.
Mr. Choto, were you surprised by the outcome?
Well, I was quite surprised. Yes, the election was rigged, and everybody should understand that. I mean, the Zimbabwean government itself does not respect the rule of law, and it has been involved in tampering with the law to make sure that the result of the election, will be in its favor.
Mr. Choto, how much of your take on this is influenced by your experience with the government?
Sorry, can you come again?
How much of your take, your interpretation of the election results is influenced by your experience, your negative experience with Mr. Mugabe's government?
Well, I mean, I see myself as a journalist, and as a journalist, I have to see things in a very objective manner. There is no argument here that the election was rigged, especially if you look at the supplementary voters roll, which was prepared at the last minute, which had more than 464,000 voters. And even again, if you look at the margin, the defeat which Tsvangirai received, I mean, that's the same margin again, and one would want to think that, I mean, Mugabe instructed the Registrar General's office to come up with that supplementary voters roll to make sure that when the result of the election is announced, it will be in his favor.
Professor Herbst, the election outcome aside for a moment, is President Mugabe popular in Zimbabwe in a way that he does not appear to be abroad?
I don't think so, in fact. I think he is in power today largely because he controls the police and the military, as well as supporting a militia that keeps him in power. If there were a truly free and fair election, I believe he would have been defeated today.
What about his anti-colonialist rhetoric? He seems to make some sort of effect with voters by talking about how Zimbabwe should not go back to being a colony that, was a Rhodesia once. Does that ring a bell? Does that have an effect?
The inequalities that were inherited